Good morning. Welcome to the Mountain Morning Show. Today, a very special edition for Memorial Day, and happy Memorial Day to you. We celebrate our heroes today, and we have spent a little bit of time over the last couple of weeks compiling some stories about some heroes for you, and we'll look back at a couple that we filmed over the last 2 years as well. Specifically, we're about to hear from Debbie Burkett Davis about her dad, Leo George Burkett. He was a B-17 bomber pilot. After that, we'll also look at a package that we did a year ago about Team Semper Fi, and we'll look at rides in the B-25 bomber, which also originated from Heber Valley. So here we are with Chelsea Havland and Leo George Burkett's story.
Hello, you're watching Park City Television. I'm Chelsea Havland. I'm out at the beautiful Heber Airport at the Utah wing of the Commemorative Air Force Aviation Museum. And I am so pleased to be joined today by Debbie Burkett Davis, and she is the daughter of Leo George Burkett, who fought in World War II, has since passed back in 2001. So Debbie, thank you so much for joining us today to speak with us about your father's life. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you, Chelsea, for inviting me. I'm very, very honored to be here and to tell you my dad's story.
Absolutely, as are we. So let's start first with his life sketch, if you will. At what time in his life did he actually become interested in the Air Force? How did that come about?
Well, Dad was born in Oklahoma, and they were very, very poor. And he has a very interesting life. I could go on forever, but he hopped trains to get to California, and he was in California when and he was going to Modesto Junior College, and then with goals of going on to the university when Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7th, 1941. And at that time, my dad had been taken under the wing of a gentleman who was a doctor and a pilot, and he was very successful. And he gave my dad the inspiration that I never again want to be poor. I want to work hard and accomplish the things similar to what this gentleman had accomplished. And so when Pearl Harbor happened, Dad, within 7 days, got his draft notice, and he said, now's my chance to go learn how to fly. So he went to the Burbank Airport and enlisted. And shortly after that, he was transferred to Williams Field in Arizona, where he took his ground training, and then to Thunderbird, which I don't know if that's an Air Force base. In his memoirs, he just refers to it as Thunderbird, but that's where he actually took his flight training. And they were being trained in biplanes, and the story he told us was that there weren't enough planes, so they transferred a big group of the men up to Boise, Idaho, and that's where they started training up to fly B-17s.
Wow. And what age was he when he did enlist?
22.
He was 22. Flying B-17 bombers. That is incredible. Give me a brief overview of the time he was serving, as well as the areas. Where did he fly?
After he got his full training in the B-17, he was transferred. He went into he was part of the 388th bomber group, and they were all sent to England, to Nettishall, England.
Got to have your notes.
My notes. Where he was told he would be for 5 months, and he ended up being there for 2 years, flying all of his missions out of Nettishall, England.
Is incredible. And this is before you came along. Yeah. He met your mother a little bit later, right?
When he was in Boise, he met my mom. She was a telephone operator. My mom was born and raised in Haley, Idaho, the Sun Valley area. And so she was in Boise going to school and being a telephone operator. And they met, I think it had to have been approximately June of 1942, and Dad was sent to Sioux City, Iowa, and he was supposed to go from there to England, and he got appendicitis. And so he called my mom and said, come to Sioux City and we'll get married. And so she and my grandmother went to Sioux City on the train, and Mom and Dad were married on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 1942.
And I want to mention real quick, obviously, with this being a celebration of all of those who have served our countries with Memorial Day upon us, we also wanted to mention, though, how much further beyond even that experience your father's life goes. Obviously, his incredible service in World War II, but you wanted to mention a couple of other things that really typify his life and are what you think of as well when you remember your father, right?
What I remember about my dad is he was very disciplined, and he was very driven to be a perfectionist in everything that he challenged himself with and everything he accomplished. And that was, I would say, the mission of his life was to be the best he could possibly be at whatever he did. And after he got out of the Air Force, he went on to become a doctor. He was a general practitioner and surgeon in southeastern Idaho for 27 years. And while he was there, he and Mom had 6 children.
Where do you fall in line?
I'm number 4. And Dad didn't want his kids roaming the streets, so he bought 20 acres of sagebrush, and we all learned how to work really hard. He developed it into at the end it was a 1,000-acre cattle ranch with irrigation wells, a feedlot. We learned to pick rock and move irrigation pipe and work really hard. Worked really, really hard. And then you know, when he retired, he took up golf, and he was just as passionate about golf as he was. But my dad thought he had 3 very successful careers in his life: the military, the medical, and the ranching. And he received awards and accolades in everything he did. He was Physician of the Year in Idaho one year, and he was Grassman of the Year.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
I know. So he received a lot of awards. But he was, and I think the military service is what taught him to be that way, to be driven to be the best he could be.
So that brings us back to 2001 when he passed away, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. It was a very difficult time. My mother had been ill for several years, and my father actually had taken care of her, being, that he was a doctor. And I always, from my perspective, thought my dad would outlive my mother for many years. But because my mother, 2 or 3 things happened. Dad was on the golf course, and he fell and hit his head very, very hard. And he even commented, I may have just injured my brain. And then my mother ended up in the hospital in Boise, and one of my sisters was driving my dad to Boise when they were in a near-fatal car accident, and they both had to be life-flighted to a hospital in Boise. And as a result of these injuries that my dad sustained, he just went downhill very quickly. And then he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and he passed before my mom, which was really hard on everyone.
And how old was he?
He was 71.
And as you mentioned before, and rightly so, someone who passed far too soon, but what a legacy. All the same. And I want you to hold this up so we can, this was compiled by whom through several interviews?
My brother and my sister interviewed my mom and my dad, but my dad primarily, regarding his life. Then they went back and interviewed my mom because she had a pretty fascinating life also. But it was through those interviews that we learned most of his stories. He didn't talk about his military service until he got older, and his softer side started to show up. I would say probably in his late 50s, 60s, when he was willing to start talking and telling his stories.
Wow. And what a treasure you have now in this book with those interviews. So stay tuned for more. We are going to come back and share with you some very special and incredible stories from the life of Leo George Burkett. Stay tuned for more.